I want to turn now to Peter Humphrey. He was a former journalist who is imprisoned in China and is now an activist for the victims of arbitrary imprisonment. He's in Surrey in southeast England this morning. Peter, so glad you could be with us. So what goes through your mind when you hear about the trial of Michael ending just 2 hours after it started without a verdict, no consular officials present? What do you think?
Well, first of all, it brings back very bad memories for me from my own experience in a Chinese courtroom. But for Michael, I can imagine that he felt awful. He would have been dragged to the courthouse this morning in shackles, I would presume, in a police van, and then they would have dragged him into the courtroom. And you're not seeing real justice unfold here. That's the reason why the trial's being held in secret. They don't want the world to see the very shabby system that they're imposing on these two men. And the fact that no verdict has yet been announced, or no outcome has been announced, doesn't surprise me. A lot of Chinese court cases do not end the trial session with a verdict and a sentence. This suggests that there will be another session in the courthouse at some point in the near future to announce the verdict and the sentence, and that could even be 2 sessions.
Based again on your experience, how much would Spavor be aware of what is going on? Do you have a voice at all when you're inside that courtroom before the judge?
You certainly don't. I mean, you do not have a real opportunity to orchestrate a proper defense, even if you nominally have been given a state-appointed defense lawyer. He will do nothing. And if you were able to appoint your own lawyers, they will very, very likely do nothing as well, because there is no right to a real defense in China. There's no way that they would have allowed defense evidence to be presented in this session. It was so short that it's quite clear that it was purely a scripted event, for the sake of window dressing procedure and so forth. I think he would have been standing there, possibly in handcuffs, with his head down and unable to say much at all. That would be the norm.
Did you feel hopeless?
I think I did, but I managed to prevent my trial taking place in secret. I had a semi-open trial, and although I felt hopeless when I watched, the pre-scripted presentations of the so-called prosecution and the interventions of the judge and the pathetic presentations of the defense counsel, I still had the room to try and put up a fight, and I did put up a fight. I and my wife both put up very strong arguments, and we got shouted down a number of times. So even if he feels desperate, Michael probably could start protesting, but unfortunately we're never going to see that.
And eventually, Peter, for people who don't know your story, and of course you were there as a journalist, how did you get released? What did it take?
Well, I was held for about 2 years, and the trial was in the middle. And basically, I knew on the day of my detention that I had a prostate problem, suspected cancer, and they wouldn't treat it. I asked for medical attention, but they were afraid that this would cause me to escape the charges. And this went on for 2 years. I was demanding medical attention every day, and they didn't give it to me. But in the end, I managed to discover that I indeed had a malignant tumor, and I managed to get word out from the prison. And this led to more intense diplomatic pressure, and I think that's probably the reason why I was released early, especially the fact that Xi Jinping, the president, was due to visit the UK around that time, and they were afraid that I was going to mess up his trip.
I'm wondering, Peter, if you have any perspective you want to share on the fact that Canada is relying on the United States to help out in this situation and releasing these two men.
I believe that China has deliberately timed this trial and the one on Monday to coincide with these initial high-level talks between America and China, supposedly to try and, start a dialogue again with China. I think that it was intended to demonstrate we've got power, we've got bargaining chips. So showing this trial at the same time as these talks were going on in Alaska was quite deliberate timing. And so the US is involved in this, and Canada depends, I think, almost wholly participation in lobbying China and in bringing about the release of these two innocent Canadians. Without an American solution, there won't be a Canadian solution.
And I want to ask you one last question. I know I've gone long with you, but how do you pass the days? They've been in prison, I've got the exact number, 830 days.
Yeah.
How do you pass that time and stay feeling like a human being?
Well, the only way, really, that people can pass that time is through reading. And I read more books in 23 months than I had read in 23 years there. And this is what distracts you from the horror around you. This is what keeps your mind on a straight and framed pathway. The second thing that helps you to pass the day is knowing how much you are loved by your family and so forth. So receiving correspondence and the odd photograph is really important. Now, I know at the beginning, certainly in the first months, the two Michaels didn't receive any of that. But I think that since then, they have been receiving reading material and have been able to exchange some limited censored letters with their families. That's really critical, because it's a moral and emotional support which helps to get you through this very wretched Chinese form of incarceration.
Peter Humphrey, thank you so much for your time with us and for sharing your experience and your insights. We'll speak with you again. All the best to you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.